Hello, this is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. You know, when you first come into the Great Plains of the U.S., of North America, all you see is flat country, big sky, and you have to be in it for a while before you start to see some really interesting things. And for example, we ran across some of those big historic missile sites that the U.S. built. It was during the Cold War era with the Soviets and the threat of that evil political philosophy called communism that prompted the U.S. to build up a military missile arsenal. The missile site that we visited is just east of the Black Hills in South Dakota along I-70. It's about a half hour to an hour drive out there toward the Badland National Park, and at the eastern entrance of the national park, that's where we spotted the missile site that we visited. When we saw the sign along the highway of this National Historic Site, we just had to stop in. The information center is small but loaded with information. The Cold War started shortly after World War II. Joseph Stalin, the Russian leader, had practically begged for help during the war against Nazi Germany. But the Western powers refused. They offered material and armaments, but not direct involvement in the bloodbath. However, the war changed. Russia now took the offensive, driving Germany back, and the threat was clear to the West that they had better jump into the war or much of Europe could be lost to a new and dominant Russia. So, late in the war, Britain and the U.S. jumped in. But Stalin was cool. Now the West jumped in when Russia had already paid the price of war and was now on the winning side. It was the foundation for a cold, unfriendly, and competitive time, and the race was on to build up armaments, including the new technology of missiles. Some of you old-timers might remember that those first missiles were the Titan missiles. And later on, the newer Minuteman missiles were stored, ready to fire toward Russia. They were stored in deep underground holes called silos, and 150 were built in South Dakota alone. I knew a fella that was an electrician, a heavy-duty electrician, and he worked at wiring up those missiles. And the men every morning had to go down into those deep silos to do their work. But the problem was there was rattlesnakes down. They came down into the silos at night. And the men refused to go to work until another crew came along and had gone down and killed all of the rattlesnakes. And that was a practice every morning during the building of a lot of those missile silos. These missiles were state-of-the-art at the time, but they are outdated today. They have been deactivated and are only tourist attractions. But they still had power and speed. Their range was 6,000 miles or almost 10,000 kilometers. It would take them only 30 minutes to reach Russia. However, they could only be fired on an arc to land in the general area. In contrast, today's missiles have directional capability where they can come into either the left or right side of your front or back door. I read a statistic one time where the Russians, with their arsenal, could kill us 100 times over. But I felt pretty good when I read the rest of that statistic. It said that we could kill the Russians 1,000 times over. Well, that made me feel real good and confident. Although it does beg the question, how many times do you have to kill a fella before he's dead? Early research and missile and rocket testing that led to modern missiles and the space program actually started in Canada. The US wanted to keep their testing program a secret from Russia, so they built a large testing program hidden on the Arctic shores of Hudson Bay, where today's tourists go to see the polar bears, whales, and northern lights at Churchill, Manitoba. Here are historical photos showing the large size of the housing area for the scientists. It is all demolished today, and the polar bears roam the area. I made a video of Churchill, but it was that historic scientific research station that created the rockets that eventually powered the missiles here and the space program that followed. And that is some of the story of those old historic missile sites hidden out on the northern end of the Great Plains of the United States. Hit the subscribe button and we'll bring you some more stories. This is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. So long for now until we ride again. If you want to see more on that old original rocket and missile site in Churchill, Manitoba, just Google, like it says here on the bottom, at Don Barnett 5090. Hit the word playlist and scroll down to the playlist that's titled something about Churchill and the polar bears. I made 3 videos in that playlist, one on the polar bears, one on the train ride up there, and one on the community itself. And I think that the rocket testing site is in the video about the community.